Hello and welcome to the Secure and Fast Alibaba Cloud Elastic Compute Service, or ECS, webinar. I'm Jeremy Peterson, and I am a solution architect at Alibaba Cloud, working in the Go China Solutions team. My technical title, my real title in the company is Solution Engineer 2, but in Alibaba that effectively makes you a solution architect. So that's what I refer to myself as. I'm very passionate about technology in general, and especially about the public cloud. I hold a bachelor's in computer engineering and a master's in computer vision. I've pivoted away from computer vision to focus on the public cloud, though, because I feel that it's really a very interesting topic, and I hope you'll agree. Today, I'll be talking a lot about Alibaba Cloud's ECS, or Elastic Compute Service, which is sort of the fundamental building block of cloud services. It's our virtual machine service. So let's get into it. Okay, so here's our agenda for the day. There's 4 parts. In part 1, I'll talk about what is ECS. Part 2, I'll talk about some reasons you might choose ECS for your workload. And then in parts 3 and 4, I will do 2 demos. Part 3 will be a quick start demo where I explain the very basic usage of ECS. And then in part 4, we'll talk a little bit more about advanced features and techniques. Okay, so let's get right into it. So what is ECS? Well, ECS is Alibaba Cloud's Elastic Compute Service. But before we talk about that, let's step back and talk about what is the cloud. So what the cloud does is it turns this into that. So it takes hardware, essentially, that's what infrastructure as a service is. It takes computer hardware and turns it into a utility, like water. So much like water or electricity, where you're metered and you pay only for what you use, you can now buy compute, storage, and network resources on demand in a very, very similar way. That is the true power of the public cloud. So what is ECS? Where does that fit into all this? So ECS is essentially Alibaba's virtual machine management component. So it allows you to create and monitor virtual machines, make backups, and create and manage the security and network settings for those machines. That's all wonderful, and that's a key part of infrastructure as a service, but it's not the only thing that makes the cloud so powerful. It's nice that you can be billed only for what you use. It's nice that you can create and destroy machines on demand, but the true power that you get from that capability is automation. You can now have a dev and test and production system that are identical to one another, that are configured in exactly the same way. You can write scripts to spin up and destroy environments for you using languages like Terraform, and that gives you the ability to do something totally new, which is treat your infrastructure as code. Now, that's a pretty advanced topic, so I won't be getting into it in the webinar, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind. So, as I said, in real terms, an ECS instance is simply a virtual machine. And the bottom 2 layers of the stack here, the hardware and the hypervisor, or the virtual machine manager, that's our responsibility. That's what Alibaba Cloud handles for you. The top layer, where the virtual machines are, those are your responsibility as the user. That's how the separation of responsibilities works for IaaS services or infrastructure as a service services on most cloud providers. The user is responsible for the VM and everything that runs on it, and the cloud provider is responsible for all of that wonderful stuff underneath, like the kernel virtual machine and the hardware. The KVM is just a hypervisor, for those that don't know. Okay, so why would you choose ECS? Why choose this? Why would you do this instead of buying and speccing out your own physical hardware and installing it in a colo facility or even in your own office? Well, there's 3 key advantages of ECS: scalability, flexibility, and efficiency. So where does scalability come in? Well, if you are buying your own physical hardware and installing it, like I said, in a co-location facility or on premises, that's great, and that works until your workload goes up. Then what do? It can take quite a few weeks or even months to get new hardware delivered, installed, set up software, do testing, integrate the new equipment into your network. All that stuff takes time. On the cloud, you don't have to worry about that. If you have 100 users today and 100,000 users tomorrow, that's no problem. You can scale up instantly, effectively, to whatever size you need just by purchasing more machines. The hardware is already there. The cloud provider already has the hardware sitting there ready to go. All you need to do is provision virtual machines on top by placing another order. It's almost instantaneous. You can scale up in minutes instead of weeks or months. What about flexibility? Okay, so let's say that you want to be able to quickly iterate or test. Well, one scenario might be you want to make sure that you can have a testing environment that's identically configured to your production environment. Now, in a traditional data center or colo, that would be too expensive for most users to do. You would have to have identical hardware for production and test, and you would have to keep that test hardware essentially running idle all the time. You're paying for that. The minute you put out the cash to buy that hardware and it's yours, if you're not using it productively, you're wasting money. So anytime your test hardware is sitting there not being used to run tests, it's a waste of money for you. On the cloud, you can spin up an environment that's identical to your production environment to run tests on new code or new applications. And then when you're done with your tests in a few hours or a few days, you release those virtual machines and you stop paying for them. That's the really cool thing. The ability to purchase hardware on demand and then purchase resources on demand and then give them back when you're done. That's something you can't do if you bought your own hardware. Then there's efficiency. A lot of things are just much easier to do at scale on the public cloud. Monitoring, operations, and security, believe it or not, are all easier. And the reason for that is you can take advantage of tools that are built into the public cloud platform to do some of these tasks for you. For instance, on Alibaba Cloud, there's a tool called Cloud Monitor, which allows you to see things like memory pressure, CPU usage, disk usage, network metrics, all from a central console for any of your ECS instances. There's a simple free agent that you can install on your instances as soon as you set them up that will monitor all this stuff for you and send it to the Cloud Monitor dashboard. And then you can configure that dashboard to do things like send you alerts or emails or SMS messages when something changes. So if memory usage exceeds a certain value on a particular instance, you can receive an alert about that. The same goes for security and also operations. There are built-in tools that can help you quickly perform batch operations like setting up a new group of machines or installing a set of security patches or detecting certain types of vulnerabilities. Most of that functionality is built in, and on Alibaba, a lot of the monitoring and ops tools are free. That's something you get for free just by using the platform. Okay, so if we're comparing ECS, in this case, we'll just say that ECS stands in for the public cloud versus on-premise, which we'll call traditional IT. What's the breakdown? What are the advantages and disadvantages of each? So the cloud, the 4 key advantages are you pay only for what you're using right now. You can scale up and scale out instantly. You can experiment easily, and you can version your infrastructure, meaning you can treat your infrastructure just like the code of your application. You can check it in the source control, and when you change things in your infrastructure, you can do that iteratively, one step at a time. So it's much less risky to change your infrastructure. But traditional IT has a few advantages if you need to control every aspect of your stack, both software and hardware. Then in a lot of cases, traditional IT is a good approach. Now, Alibaba has a great way to let you control both the software and the hardware, which is called the dedicated host. I think it's DDH. You can look on our site, alibabacloud.com. In that case, you really do get to control both the hardware and the software in your stack. So that traditional IT advantage is going away. 2 advantages that are still mostly solidly on the traditional IT side of the fence are using rare or esoteric hardware and easily supporting legacy software. If you have some system that has to run on very particular hardware or that's 30 or 40 years old and there's really no way to port it over to run in Linux or Server 2016 or whatever on the cloud, in that case, traditional IT still wins. But for pretty much every modern application that you're building, you should be considering, should I use the public cloud? The advantages far outweigh the disadvantages at this point. Okay, so I've introduced a little bit about what ECS is and why I think you should be using it. So now let me give you a quick demo. All right then, so here I am in my test account. This is the Alibaba Cloud console homepage that we're looking at now. This is where your billing summary shows up, info about tickets and alarms, expiring instances. You can see all that from the homepage. The first thing I need to do, even before I go into the ECS console, is I need to set up a VPC group. If you're going into the console for the first time, you actually can skip this step. Your new accounts will have a default VPC group set up in each Alibaba Cloud region, but I like to do this by hand because it's an essential step, and I really think you should understand it. essentially every ECS instance needs to live inside of a VPC network group. So let's go ahead and set that up right now. So I'll click up here on the top menu, go to Products, type in VPC, choose VPC from the networking menu, and then here we are in the VPC console. And you need to double check what region you're in. I'm going to do most of the testing in Hangzhou. So I'm going to switch over to the Hangzhou region, which is empty. There's no VPCs here. This is because I deleted the default VPC group. So the first thing I need to do is create a new VPC in Hangzhou. I'll call it HZVPC so I know what it is and where it is. You need to choose a network address block for your VPC. You can think of the VPC as being essentially a private network that your ECS instances live inside of. VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, and the VPC group is essentially a virtual private network in which your ECS instances live. Okay, so I'm going to choose this default CIDR block. I don't really have any compelling reason to change, so I'll use the default. And then within your VPC, you'll need to set up at least one vSwitch. This is just like a real physical network switch in the sense that you need to have at least one of these so that your instance has something to connect to, so that it can communicate with other instances in the VPC group. The VPC groups themselves are a region-level concept, meaning that each VPC group occupies an Alibaba Cloud region. vSwitches are a zone-level concept. So to provide additional redundancy, each Alibaba Cloud region consists of multiple zones, which are physically independent data centers with independent power and network and all of that. Typically, you want to set up vSwitches across multiple zones within a region to ensure redundancy in case a zone goes down. This is a good high availability architecture practice. So I'm actually going to set up, Hangzhou has quite a few zones. I'm only going to set up VPCs in B and D. So I'll call this I'll only set up vSwitches in zones B and D. HCVSWB, so I know this is my Hangzhou vSwitch in zone B. Okay, and then I'll click Add to create another vSwitch, which I'll call HZVSWD, and I'll create him in the D zone. And it's very important to know that the IP address ranges of the vSwitches cannot overlap. That's not allowed. If that were the case, then ECS instances on vSwitches with overlapping address ranges might not be able to talk to each other. So you need to make sure these ranges don't overlap. My overall address range for the VPC is 192.168.0.0/16. My two vSwitches here, I'm going to have each of them occupy a /24. I'll put this one in .0, this one in .1. And then I click OK, and that should go ahead and automatically create my new VPC network group and the two vSwitches. So now I have a VPC, I have some vSwitches, I can now go ahead and create an ECS instance to put into this group. But before we do that, we'll do one other thing. When I newly create a ECS instance, it's going to need to occupy a security group. So I want to go ahead and set up a security group for my ECS instances first. The security group's job is to define the traffic types that are allowed in and out of my security group. So they determine what traffic is allowed to reach into my instances and what connections my instances are allowed to make back out. So just to reiterate, since I don't think I explained that very clearly, you can think of the security group as being a firewall. It's a stateful set of rules about what types of connections are allowed in and what types are allowed out. Now, by default, when you create a security group, all traffic is allowed out unless you explicitly deny it, and no traffic is allowed in. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new security group with some inbound rules that will allow traffic in on port 80 and port 22. So we'll call it Web Server Linux is a great name. Web Server HZ will be the name for it. I won't set a description, but you can if you like. And then I will go ahead and attach it to my Hangzhou VPC. Security groups must be attached to a VPC. So you need to have at least one VPC group before you can create a security group. And the rules for the Web Server Linux template are that these are the types of traffic allowed in. So ICMP, so I can ping my ECS instances, I can connect over SSH, and both HTTP and HTTPS are allowed. and they are allowed inbound from any public IP address. Outbound rules is empty because by default, all traffic is allowed outbound. So I'll click OK to go ahead and create that group. I don't need to create new rules. The default rules are good, so I'll close that dialog. And now I have the two most fundamental things set up that I need to do before I create my ECS instance. So I've set up a VPC group, so my instance has a network environment that it can live in, and I've created a set of security group rules that I've attached to that VPC that I can use to define what types of connections are allowed to be made to whatever ECS instances I now create. And there's other pre-configuration we could do, but since this is a basic demo, I think that's probably adequate. So now I'll go over to the instances area here, and I'll double check that I'm in Hangzhou, and then I will choose Create Instance. Okay, so here we are on the instance creation page. There's a quick launch tab over here if you're in a hurry. This has some easy defaults you can use. I'm going to use custom launch, which is the default for the buy page. There are 3 billing methods. There's preemptible, pay-as-you-go, and subscription. I'm going to use pay-as-you-go because I plan to release this instance later. And if you recall, we set up our instances in zones B and D. I'm going to choose zone B. And then I will use the lowest specification instance type that I can to save money, since I'm only doing this demo for the webinar. So I'm going to delete this instance later anyway. No need to buy an expensive one. So once you've chosen an instance family or type, you then need to choose what operating system the instance is going to run. The publicly available instances that Alibaba Cloud deploys for you, creates for you, include Windows Server, Ubuntu, Ali Linux, which is essentially CentOS with lots of Alibaba additions on it, Red Hat, Debian, SUSE Linux, OpenSUSE, CoreOS, and FreeBSD. And if you click on any of those, you can see which versions are available. So FreeBSD, we only offer 11.2, but if you were to look at Windows Server, you'll see that we have English and Chinese versions of Windows Server all the way from 2019 back to 2012. And actually, depending on the instance class you choose, I think you can go all the way back to Server 2008. All right, so I'm going to choose Ubuntu, and then 18. And these here, these are other possibilities for you. Marketplace images are images from the Alibaba Cloud Marketplace. Those are images that can include pre-installed software like Drupal or WordPress. Those images are images that are built by our partners. We run them through some security tests, and then once they're up on the marketplace, you can deploy them onto your own ECS instances by choosing them from this marketplace image button. Shared images are system images that are shared with you by someone else. So if someone else in your team under another Alibaba Cloud account creates an image and you want to use that image, you can go ahead and do that by having them share it with you from their console, and then it will show up in shared images. Custom images are images you have created yourself from your running ECS instances. So I could boot up a standard Ubuntu instance, install a LAMP web application stack, power the instance down, make a snapshot, turn the snapshot into an image, and then that custom image, that new image would show up here under custom images, and I could use it to boot additional instances. And actually, I may go ahead and do that in just a bit here when I do the advanced and best practices part of the demo. I will leave the disk size at defaults, and then we'll go to the next page, which is networking. And you'll see the first thing I need to do is, of course, choose a VPC group that this instance is going to be homed in. This is going to be where my instance lives, and it will be my HZ-VPC, and I selected Zone B when I was on the previous page, so here we are, we've selected the vSwitch in Zone B automatically. You can choose to assign a public IP address or not. In our case, we are going to go ahead and assign a public IP so we can log into this instance, but there are lots of situations where you might not do this. One example I can think of off the top of my head would be if you're planning to create a web application server pool, like a server group, and those servers are going to sit behind a load balancer, then those servers don't need public IPs. The load balancer should have a public IP, and then the load balancer can forward traffic onto those servers using their private IP addresses. So there's really no need for a load balancer in that situation, or excuse me, no need for the servers to have a public IP in that situation where there's a load balancer in front of them. I'm setting up a single standalone instance. I actually do want internet access to him, so I'm going to go ahead and check this box and then assign a public IP. There's two billing methods for traffic outbound to the internet. There's pay by traffic and also pay by bandwidth. If you know that you're going to have reliable, predictable, relatively high load on your instance, you probably want to choose pay by bandwidth. It is the more cost-effective option in that scenario. I'm going to go with pay by traffic. If you choose pay by traffic, sliding this slider doesn't have any effect on the final price that you see at the bottom because you won't be billed for the traffic until it actually happens. So if you choose pay by traffic and you go up to 100, that just means that your instance is allowed to sustain a throughput of 100 megabits per second, which you will be billed for on a per megabit per second basis. So do be careful with this slider. If you really are rarely going to log into this thing, or you're using this ECS instance as a bastion host, I would move this down and throttle your traffic down to like 5 or 10 megabits per second so that someone can't come and use your bastion host to like download a gargantuan file and incur a huge network expense. But I'm just testing, and I know I'm going to delete this instance in a bit, so I'm going to choose the maximum peak bandwidth. Next thing to do, we need to select a security group for our instance. So I'm going to do that right now. I'll choose the web server HC group I set up earlier, and I will click select. The Elastic Network Interface is just the virtual NIC card that's attached to the instance. I don't need to change anything here. I could attach a second virtual NIC card if I wanted to. I'm not going to. I'm going to leave that alone. Next is system configuration. This is where we set things like the host name, the instance name, which is the name of the instance that we will see in the Alibaba Cloud Console when we're on the instance overview page. And then we need to assign a key pair or a password. Typically, it's a good practice to use a key pair rather than a password. But because I am just doing a test, I'm going to give this instance a password. It's especially important, actually, if you are planning to create more than one instance. You should absolutely be using a key because it's much easier to rotate keys than it is to go log into every instance and change your password if you find out that your password has been compromised. So always use a SSH key if you're going to be doing this in production or if you're creating a fleet of ECS. Instance name, I'm going to call it HZ test. I'll make sure the host name is the same. I like to do that just out of habit so that when I log in and I'm on the Linux command line, I know what machine I'm on. Down here, if you want, under advanced, you can do two very cool things. One is you can fill in this user data field. You can put scripts in here, so if there's something you need or want your instance to do at boot time, you can put that in this box. You can also assign what's called a RAM role to your instance. This is advanced, so I'm not going to talk about that just now. To put it in simple terms, this gives your instance permission to use other Alibaba Cloud services. So if I needed my ECS instance to use object storage service or talk to RDS to manage databases, then I might want to attach a RAM role for that purpose. Again, I'm going to leave both of these blank for now. I'll go to grouping. I don't need to change anything here. If I wanted, I could tag my instances. This is a really good idea if you're running a lot of ECS instances and you need to differentiate them by purpose or by team. You would want to tag them. The tag is just a key value pair that you attach to your running resources, which you can later use to sort and filter. You could also add your instance to a deployment set. I won't do that. Or you could even create a dedicated host, which, as I said, is a host where you are the only tenant on the hardware. The hardware is all for you. There are no other people running their virtual machines there. Typically, you'd use that if you need to have a more private environment than what already exists because of regulatory reasons, or if you need to run software which is licensed per CPU core, then you have to use dedicated host. All right, so preview, this is where we see the overview information about all of the configuration choices we just made. I don't need to change anything there. If I wanted, I can do something very cool, which is I can save this as a launch template, which means that I can save this configuration into the Alibaba Cloud Console so that later I can create instances that are exactly the same as this one. So they use the same disk image, they have the same network settings, they join the same vSwitch. Actually, I will go ahead and do that so I can make advantage of that in the next demo. So let's go ahead, actually, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I'll call it HZ inst template. And then we'll call, I don't know, I guess I'll call it version, early test version. Sure, why not? That seems like a good name. And then I will save it. So now later, if I want to create an instance just like this, I'll have it in the console. Great. I can also, this is a very cool Alibaba Cloud feature that I haven't seen on other public clouds. You can choose to make your instance auto-release at a particular time. This way, if you forget to release your instance that you were using for testing or playing around, it will get released automatically for you, which will save you some money. I will set this up to auto-release tomorrow. I will probably manually release it when the demo is done, but in case I forget, this will auto-release for me. And then the very last thing you need to do before you create your new instance is go ahead and check here to agree to the ECS terms of service. And something I want to point out, since I'm doing this demo for what I hope is an audience that's new to Alibaba Cloud, these prices down here are not accurate. Don't pay too much attention to those. I'm doing this demo from a test account, so the way test accounts are set up, everything costs a penny. That's not how it is in the real world. You should expect to see slightly higher numbers here. It will depend on the hardware configuration you've selected, on the disk image you've selected. Those will have an impact on the prices you see here. All right, so create instance. Let's wait for that to complete. Okay, great. So an instance has now been created, and we can go ahead and return to the console. And there's some helpful links down here if you want to know what else you can do, what you can do next. All right, let's go back to the console. If everything went as planned, the instance should be starting, and you can see that it is now starting. So once it's started up, we will go ahead and log into it via SSH, take a look around, make sure everything's working. We'll install Apache, and then I will try to visit the IP address of this instance here in Chrome, see if I can see the Apache test site. So see if I can see the Apache test homepage once I've finished setting everything up. Okay, great. So you can see that the instance is now in the running state. So it has booted up successfully. If I wanted, I could click on the instance ID here. That would take me to an instance overview page where in a few minutes I will start getting information about CPU and network usage. If I wanted, I could also install the Cloud Monitor agent, which would allow me to see other instance-related metrics like memory usage, running processes, stuff at the operating system level. By default, you can only see things that the virtual machine manager can see, which would be things like CPU and network utilization, not individual processes or memory usage, which are properties that you would only be able to see if you have operating system level access. So the Cloud Monitor agent would actually have to be installed on your VM to see those. Okay, so let's log into this instance. So the public IP is here. I'll just copy that. And let me open up a terminal and we'll go ahead and log in. Okay, so here we are in the terminal. Let's go ahead and SSH into our new instance. By the way, the default username for Ubuntu images on Alibaba Cloud is root. You log in as the root user. Okay, we get the warning about the key fingerprint because we've never connected before. Say yes, put in the password that we configured in the console, and there you go. We can now go ahead and install software on the instance. So for instance, I could run apt update, get a list of new packages, and then I could go ahead and install Apache 2. So let's actually try that. Let's go ahead and install Apache 2 and see if we can get a website up and running on this instance. Apt install Apache 2. I'll say yes, I want to install it. It should be quite fast because we mirror most Ubuntu packages close to the region where we deploy our Ubuntu images. So yeah, it's quite fast when you install new packages. I should now have a var www HTML directory, and I do. So now if I were to go back into Chrome, I should be able to open up a new tab and navigate over to the instance public IP and see the Apache 2 Ubuntu default page, which I can. All right, great. So that actually worked really well. So the next thing to do would be to simply take some next steps and look at what the best practices are. So that's all for the basic demo. let's move on to the advanced demo in just a minute. All right, so we've reached the next stage here. It's time for the advanced usage and best practices demo. So I've just shown you how to create a VPC group, how to create a security group, and how to create an ECS instance inside of your wonderful new VPC group. So you know how to do the basics, you're familiar with the purchase process. Now let's look at how you could go to the next level and use some of the more advanced features of the ECS console. All right, so I'm back in the ECS console and I've left my test instance running. It's just sitting here running, doing nothing. Well, I mean, it's serving up that web page, but effectively it's doing nothing. What can I do next? Where can I go from here? Let's imagine that I need to be able to automate a deployment of a fleet of instances like this one, or perhaps I want to have a fleet of instances like this one running behind a load balancer. Where would I go next? So the first thing I might do, once I've got all my software set up properly on this test instance, would be to make an image of this instance. So I would make a disk image from this running instance, and then I could use that to create a launch template, which I could use to launch a bunch of clones. I could use it to create a fleet of clones. So now it's time for advanced usage attack of the clones. Let's do this. So the first thing I want to do is create a disk snapshot of this instance's system disk. So how would I do that? Well, I would go over to Manage, and I would go to Disks, and then I would click on Create Snapshot, and I'll call it HZ Test Snapshot. And then typically you'd want to put in a date or something similar like that. I'll put in 2019. That should be okay. I don't plan on doing this a whole lot. Yeah, I'll say February 2019, maybe March. Yeah, he'll be my March image. Okay. And then I'll click OK, and that will initiate the snapshot creation process. So now my snapshot is well on its way to being created. If I want, I can go down to snapshots, and I can see the progress of the snapshot. So the next thing to do is simply wait for this to complete. Then I'll be able to create an image. And the difference between a snapshot and an image really isn't much. An image is simply a snapshot that you can use as a boot disk for a new instance. So there's a formal step, a logical step in the console that I need to take to convert this snapshot into an image, and then I'll be able to use this snapshot to boot up new ECS instances and perhaps make an autoscaling group, an application group. Now, an autoscaling group is a group of instances that can shrink and grow and shrink in response to things like CPU usage statistics. So for instance, if I have a pool of instances and they are all using their CPU usage is exceeding 80% for more than 2 minutes, I can use that to trigger a scaling event which will add additional ECS instances to this pool, which will allow me to handle the additional demand that my application is experiencing. All right, so our snapshot's about halfway done. While we're waiting for the snapshot to finish, I can introduce a few other best practices here. So one thing I did that's not really an Alibaba Cloud best practice is I gave this machine its own public IP address just by ticking that apply public IP box in the purchase process. That's actually not a good way to give a public IP to an instance you intend to leave running for a long time, because it can't be reassigned to another instance later, so it's not very flexible. If you are planning in the future to perhaps replace or upgrade one of your ECS instances with another higher spec instance, it's a much better idea to use elastic IPs. So if you have to jump to another console for that, it's actually in the VPC console. But if I click here on EIP, you'll see that there's an area in the virtual private cloud console where I can purchase these so-called elastic IPs. And then the cool thing about these is that they can be bound and unbound from ECS instances and also from server load balancers. So if I want to make sure that my application always presents a unified interface, always has the same public IP, I can do that through the EIP, even if the resources behind the EIP need to change. That's really cool. So I can buy an EIP, set my DNS records to point to that EIP, and then even if I take that EIP and assign it to a different ECS instance or to a load balancer, there's no effect on my DNS records or the IP settings that any of the visitors to my application have. All that stuff can remain static because the EIP never changed. never changes. The resources that it points to are what changes. So that's a very cool feature. So if I wanted to, I could just click here and buy an EIP right now, and then maybe we'll use it later in the demo. Okay, so I'll go ahead and buy one here in Hangzhou. So let's just wait for the EIP page to load. I'll choose the Hangzhou region. I will say that it's by traffic. Again, it's probably a better idea to choose by bandwidth if you know you're going to have high usage, but I don't. I'll max it out at 200 megabits per second, and I'll call it HZEIP, very descriptive name. And Elastic IPs, there's two billing quantities. One is the cost per hour, and one is the public traffic fee. So if you're doing pay by traffic, you pay a fee per gigabyte of traffic that transits the EIP, and you pay a reservation fee for reserving the EIP for as long as you have it reserved under your account. I'll go ahead and click buy. That will go ahead and purchase this EIP for me. I have to agree to the terms of service and click activate. And then a few moments later, I will see this Elastic IP showing up in my console. I'll go ahead and close this order page, and I'll go back over to the VPC console, and I should now see that I have an EIP address available. And now I can bind that to a couple different things. I can bind it to a network address translation gateway, and that gateway. I can bind it to an ECS instance, a load balancer. I can even bind it to one of the secondary network interfaces on an ECS instance. So if I have an ECS that has multiple ENIs or elastic network interfaces attached, then each of them can have their own separate public IP via this secondary ENI binding here in the EIP console. I'm going to leave it alone right now and not use it for anything. Okay, we'll go back to the ECS console. Let's see how our snapshot is doing. All right, so it looks like our snapshot was 100% successful. And you can see I've actually got old snapshots in here from previous tests that I did. I can actually go ahead and delete those. So I'll click OK. Oh, nope, I've created images from those, so I'd have to delete the images first. So let me show you how you go about creating an image. So I've got my new HZ test snapshot that I just made. I click on Create Custom Image, and then I'll call it HZ Image 2019-03. Web Server Image. And then I'll click Create, and that will instantaneously create a new image for me. Oh, one thing that you should know about snapshots, you can use them to roll back your instance's disk to a previous state. All I would have to do is shut down the instance and click on Rollback Disk. That will trigger my instance to replace the current contents of the disk with the content of the snapshot and then do a reboot. So if the instances are a great way to recover from a failure or revert to an earlier working version of your application. All right, let's go take a look at the images area here under instances and images. You can see I've got three. Two of them were created from those other two old snapshots. I can delete those. One of them is the one that I just created. I'm going to leave him alone. And then you see that I can create new instances from him, and I can even see a list of instances that are currently using this image. And I said that you could share images with other accounts. You can do that from here. There's a Share Image button. Okay, great. So now we've got our new snapshot and our new image. Just to do some house cleaning here, I'm going to delete those old snapshots now. I've got my snapshot, I've got my image. Let's try actually creating a group of ECS instances that all boot using this image. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to create a new launch template. You can see there's actually an old one here, which is the one we created in the basic demo. I'm going to ignore him and create a brand new one. So I don't want to clone a template. I want to create a new one. Hold on. Okay, great. Oh, I think I skipped a step. Sorry, let me go back to the launch templates area. I will delete this old template, and then we'll create a new one. Okay, so let's do this. Pay as you go. Again, we will choose Zone B. I want to choose a cheap instance type, so I'll choose something from entry level. And then I will choose that it should run a custom image this time. it will run my HZ image. 40 gig disk, it will be in HZ VPC. This time, let's say it should not have a public IP address, and it should be in my web server HZ security group. Advanced configuration, great. We will actually create an SSH key pair this time so that we have a safer way to log into our instances. HZ best practice test. If you choose auto create, the console will generate a private key for you and will trigger Chrome or whatever web browser you're using to automatically download the public key material so you can log in. So I'll click OK, and you can see that that has forced a download of this key, and I now have the key showing up in my console. I can go back over here to my launch template configurator, click refresh, and then choose this key from the dropdown. HZ scalers, or HZ best practice test. I'll make sure they all have that host name and instance name. Well, actually, I won't change the host name. I'll make sure they all have this instance name. And then no RAM roles are needed. I will confirm the configuration. It's a new template, HZ best practice temp, and the version is version V1, I guess. We'll just call it V1. It's the first version, and then I'll create this launch template, and I will go to View Template, which should take us back to the console, and I can close that tab. Great, you can see my template is right here, ready to go. And now I can use it to do much more advanced things like create an auto-scaling group. So let me show you, now that I've shown you how to back up instances and create custom images, maybe I can show you how you can create an auto-scaling group. Actually, no, I won't do that yet. I think there's a few other things I should show you first. So storage and snapshots. I should mention, when you make a snapshot, you don't have to do it manually like I showed you, where we went to the instance configuration, we went to the disk, we clicked on create snapshot. You can set up automatic snapshot policies, and in fact, I highly recommend you do that for any instance you have in production. What you would do is you'd click on this auto snapshot policies tab under snapshots, you'd click on create policy, you'd give the policy a name like daily backup, you'd choose the runtime. Typically, if you're running a service that has a lot of users in the daytime, you might want to choose a time in the middle of the night to run. You can say, let's say we'll keep the snapshots for 30 days, but you can keep them up to, essentially forever. And then I'll say that this executes every day of the week at 3 a.m. And then I'll say, okay. So what this effectively does is it takes a snapshot of my instance every day. We'll say it applies to my HZ test instance. Sure. What that will do is take a snapshot of my instance every day at 3 a.m. and it will store the last 30 days worth of snapshots. So now I have an automatic backup policy, super easy to configure. You should definitely do this for any instances that you leave running regularly. Okay, great. So I've explained everything I wanted to explain about snapshots and handling instance disks and creating custom images, and even about creating launch templates so you can launch identical instances in the future. The only other thing I can think of that I might want to show you is how the EIP works. So actually, let's go ahead and bind an elastic IP, create a new instance and bind an elastic IP to it. So I'll go to my launch templates, use them to create a brand new instance, create instance. I won't have to do any configuration this time because everything's set by the template. All I have to do is agree to the terms of service and hit create instance. Okay, and that will go ahead and automatically create a new instance for me following that configuration that I just did. Let's go back to the console and take a look. Okay, great. So my new instance is up here booting up. It says running, but given the time it takes to boot, I think it probably still needs a few seconds. Also, this instance only has a private IP, so there's no way for us to log into this right now. We can fix that by binding our elastic IP. So let me show you how that would work. The first instance we created in the basic demo already has an IP address associated with it, but this new instance doesn't. So let's go ahead over to the network and security area, swap over to the VPC console again. Let's close some of these tabs. There's too many tabs going on. Close some of these other tabs we don't need. Okay, we'll go to the VPC console. here's my elastic IP, and I'll click on bind. And for my instance type, I will choose ECS instance and HZ best practice test, which is the instance that I just created. And now my instance has a public IP. And the really cool thing about this public IP, again, just to reiterate, is that I can unbind this public IP from my HZ best practice instance and attach it to a different instance at a later date. So if I ever decide, oh, this instance family is not the right type or it's too small, I need to migrate my instance to a different instance type, no problem. Just unbind the EIP, rebind it to the new instance. Okay, so you can see we now have an elastic IP bound. I should be able to open up my terminal again and go ahead and visit this new instance. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to have to kill my terminal first. Okay, so I've gone ahead and fixed my terminal here. Let's go ahead and try to log into our new instance using our key. Whoops. Okay, and the username is root. The IP address will be the elastic IP. And you're about to see something very interesting here. Two interesting things. First, I forgot to change the permissions on my key. But secondly, even though I'm logging in with even though I was logging in with a key, the instance after it couldn't use the key defaulted to letting me log in with a password. Now, normally that wouldn't happen, except you'll remember that I created this instance by making a disk image of my original HZ test instance from the first demo, and that instance allowed password-based login because I didn't set up a key. So this instance also allows password-based login, even though there is an SSH key present. You would typically want to avoid that in a production scenario. You should only allow login by key. You shouldn't allow people to fall back on passwords. I'm not going to fix that because I want to focus on the demo, but it's something to be aware of. All right, and you should be able to see that this instance created from the disk image already has Apache running. So I can go back to Chrome, I can plug in the elastic IP address, and we should see the default page there. Yeah, so sure enough, you can see the Apache 2 default page showing up. All right, great. So we didn't actually have to set up Apache ourselves. It was already on the disk image. So as soon as the machine sets up, it's ready to go, ready to run. All right, fantastic. So you've seen how you can create launch templates to boot up a machine without having to do any manual configuration. You've seen how you can use snapshots to create images, which you can use to boot new machines with identical configuration to a previously created machine. You've seen how to configure VPCs and security groups. The only other thing that I would want to show you in a best practice demo would be how to use autoscaling. So let me show you how autoscaling works, because autoscaling is a very, very cool tool for running any kind of a distributed scalable web application. So let's open up the autoscaling console and take a look. So the first thing you would want to do if you're setting up an autoscaling group is click on Create Scaling Group. This is going to create a group of ECS instances that automatically grows and shrinks. We'll say that it has a maximum of, I don't know, 5 machines, and that, or we'll say maximum of 2, minimum of 1, and or maybe minimum of 2, maximum of 3. Yeah, that's a little bit more reasonable. But we'll call it HZ Best Practice ASG for autoscaling group. The expected instances, we'll just say that this would be the minimum. We'll just say 2. Cooldown time, that's how long the group has to wait before creating or destroying instances that have just been added to the group. Leave it at 300 seconds. We won't enable deletion protection. We want the group to be deletable because we're doing a demo. You can choose the removal policy, so what order the instances get removed in. I'll leave that as the default. And we will use a launch template to go ahead and create new instances. We'll use the launch template that we just configured. We use the default version of that template, and we will make sure that instances always join this VPC. And actually, we will have some additional flexibility here. We will allow the autoscaling group to create instances in both B and D. Although, in our particular case, our launch template specifies a zone, so this might not actually take effect. We might only end up with instances in zone B. I won't change anything else. You'll see down here you can bind a server load balancer and an RDS database instance to your group. We're not going to do that. In production, you probably would go ahead and do that. All right, scaling group already exists. Okay, enable the group. Great, so that will go ahead and start the group. The first thing the group should do is we expect to have a minimum of 2 instances running in this group at any time. So the very first thing the scaling group should do is go ahead and boot up 2 instances. So if we wait a little bit, we should see that 2 instances are booting up and getting added to this group. So let's just wait for that to happen. All right, so after waiting a bit, you can see that the instance group, the auto-scaling group now contains 2 instances. We can go to Manage and have a closer look. There are 2 instances in service, which means working and ready to go, and a total of 2. You can have the total be different from the in-service number if some of the instances are stopped, starting, in standby, being removed, or are unhealthy. So the scaling group lets you set health checks that can detect when an instance is malfunctioning and remove it from the group. The group can also detect if the total number of instances goes down for some other reason, like an instance has been removed by some other process, such as a manual deletion. So you can see we've got 2 instances running here. They're in the group and they're healthy. If I was to assign my Elastic IP to one of these, I would then be able to actually see my Apache default page, because these, again, have been created from my custom image that has Apache built in. So let me show you what is the cool thing about these groups. So I'm going to go back to the console here, refresh. I've got 4 running instances now. 2 belong to the scaling group, and 2 are the ones I created earlier in the demo. The really neat thing is that I can go ahead and delete one of these instances from the scaling group, and the group will recover on its own. So let's watch that happen. So I've just deleted one of the 2 instances in the scaling group. So if I refresh the console, in a moment, I'll see that only 1 instance is in service. So let's wait a minute for that to occur. It takes a minute for the scaling group to detect the change, but it will eventually automatically detect that an instance has gone missing. Okay, so unfortunately it was so fast I didn't catch it, but the scaling group did create another instance to take the place of the one that I deleted. In fact, if you go back over here, you can see that there's now 2 instances running again. So it went ahead and automatically replaced the one that I deleted. So basically auto-scaling groups, in addition to being able to scale up and down in step with demand, they're also able to self-heal. So that's an advanced feature of those groups. All right, great. So that's all I wanted to share for the advanced demo. I think you have a feel for some of the best practices around key usage, Elastic IP, creation of scaling groups, and also security groups and instance image creation. So let's get on to the Q&A section. All right, and with that, we reached the end of the webinar. So thank you everyone for watching my session here at the Academy Day online conference. I hope you enjoyed the session and that you learned a lot of useful information about our products and services. So if you have any questions about today's topic, ECS, you can submit them by using the Ask a Question box, which is on your right. We'd also like to invite you to claim your Alibaba Cloud product coupons by clicking on the March promotion banner. Please note that these coupons are only available in March, so please use them quickly. Also, if you're ready, you can click on the button below to start a short test. It's more of a quiz, really, based on the content of this webinar. After you successfully complete the test, you can apply for a recognition of attendance certificate. And what's more, you can also sign up to take the ACA offline exam for free. So I recommend that you do that. Again, thank you very much for joining my webinar, and hopefully I'll see you in my next one.